Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paul Macdonald, and I am joined here with the Performance Director of Zone7, Rich Buchanan. And we are here to talk about a recent product development within the Zone7 app, the Periodisation Planner, which has been introduced in the last 5 or 6 weeks to the product. And we're here to talk about it and say exactly why we brought it into the business and the benefits that it brings. So, Rich, thank you very much for joining me. The recent launch of the Periodisation Planner is an upgrade on Zone7 software that you feel will be invaluable for existing clients. Can you explain exactly what the Periodisation Planner does and how it assists performance departments?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, Paul, thanks for having me on and exploring this topic. The Periodisation Planner within the Zone7 software was sort of born primarily out of feedback that we had from the current client base and prospective clients, really, just to fundamentally make sure that actually the insights that the algorithm was generating was sort of specific to their environment. So let's just use football as an environment. You know, one club can look very different to another, even though they sort of compete in the same competition. So what their sort of routine and their training rhythm is like in between competitive fixtures can look very different. So the Periodisation Planner was fundamentally born out of trying to get a better understanding of each user's environment, so that the algorithm was really as on point as it could be when it was making its analysis and its recommendations.
Okay, so basically you said it was based on feedback. Can you explain a little bit of that feedback process for us and what exactly set you down that path of creating it in the first place?
Yeah, of course. We're always looking for feedback in lots of different ways. So, fundamentally it's from the casual conversations that we have with our users on a regular basis. Some of that was kind of formal canvassing of the users of feedback, and some of it was through our sort of partnerships with organizations like the League Managers Association or the Association of Sport Directors, where it was really trying to canvass an opinion sort of broadly across football clubs, other sports organizations, as to kind of what's really important to them. So again, like I mentioned, it was about Zone7's analysis of the data, really reflecting kind of what their day-to-day looked like.
So just on that process of the day-to-day, using the app regularly, what kind of benefits and additional planning options and newfound flexibility does this offer to a performance team? So as in, what can a Zone7 user utilising the Periodisation Planner do now that they couldn't necessarily previously do?
Sure. So when Zone7's algorithms do the analysis on the data, historically what had happened was the algorithm would look at the team's historical data and use that as reference points for making the outputs of the algorithm and the insights that it was providing to the user. Now, what we all know from sport is that what happened in the past doesn't necessarily look like an exact replica in the current day. It could be that there's nuances around the competitive schedule. It could be that there's a different coaching regime that has a slightly different methodology and a different way of working. So rather than kind of taking past sequences of events and ways of working and using them to kind of assume that that's the current state of play, what the Periodisation Planner does is allow the end users to inform the algorithm, right? If, for example, we've got 6 days between a competitive fixture, this is our typical routine. Could be day off, recovery day, physical conditioning day, tactical preparation day. And then the following week, it could be that we have 3 days between a competitive fixture. Okay, what does the actual working schedule look like in that type of scenario? And this is kind of on a rinse and repeat pattern right the way through a season. So it allows fundamentally the end user to go, hey, this is what our typical routine looks like, and inform the algorithm of that. so that then the algorithm presents its recommendations to, arguably maybe do some more work with the athlete, maybe do some less work with the athletes. That's reflective of kind of where they are in their sequence of preparation between competitive fixtures. So that's the kind of first layer. And then the second layer to it is what we call our simulator. So, if you kind of want to have a glimpse into the future, if you like, Zone7 has this simulator function where you can input projected loads. So the algorithm will give recommendations about what you might want to do moving forward, either the next day or in the next couple of days. And it will use that sort of typical routine that you've informed on the periodization planner to sort of frame its recommendations. There are nuances to it and ways of flexing and adjusting the recommendations, but fundamentally it's about providing a foundation to the outputs that the algorithm gives that is likely to be most reflective of what that each environment looks like.
And you just touched on that slightly there. I assume if there is a change of protocol or change of management, it makes that process a lot easier to hand over because it's very clear in the planner what has been done, but also what is being projected to be done by the simulator, so that anyone new coming into the environment can understand exactly where the performance team has been working from.
Absolutely. I think, we all know that professional sport can be volatile, right? So, you do get these changes of regimes that have, in many cases, different philosophies, different ways of working. So, the algorithm has to adapt as quickly as possible to this kind of new normal, if you like, and giving the end user the ability to kind of like preload the algorithm with information to say, right, yes, this was what was done historically, but this is what is likely to be done moving forward. And just makes that kind of transition between regime changes much more smoother from an algorithmic perspective.
So one area that's often discussed within decision-making teams is sometimes they can be overwhelmed by data, which I guess is the purpose of the product of Zone7, is to try and make sense of that data. But does the periodization planner itself seek to provide an overall solution in that problem in terms of allowing different departments to talk to each other more accurately and more quickly?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good question. I mean, the whole kind of high performance presumption would be that the moving parts within a sports organization are, closely aligned, communicating clearly, exchanging information, and kind of coming to whatever decisions they need to make in a conjoined way. I think there's lots of examples out there where that perhaps isn't the case. But what the periodization planner probably does is it allows the performance practitioners, the medical staff, the sort of prerequisite, if you like, to have a discussion maybe with the coaching staff around, okay, what is your way of working? What is your likely sort of sequence of microcycle training, and so they can have a conversation about it, perhaps where they wouldn't before, maybe, with a justification of, look, we could do with knowing this information in a little bit of detail so that we can help with our data analytics, of which, Zone7 machine learning is a tool that we use. And to inform the algorithm, we need to preload it with some information. So, I do see it as a tool at the practitioner's disposal, yes, to make sense of all the data, but actually also to trigger conversations that, otherwise might be more difficult to have. There's a justification to have that conversation.
Yeah, and just to that effect, would you say that this allows organisations to be more proactive in terms of their planning rather than necessarily reactive, which might have been the case in the past?
Yeah, I think that's a good assumption. I think that, there's always a little bit of a balance between being proactive and then having to be reactive to whatever circumstances, arise. But fundamentally, I think it does, like I said before, kind of like stimulate thoughts of, right, being a little bit more proactive with our planning and our preparation, and actually, what does tomorrow look like? What does next week look like? What does the next couple of weeks look like? And I'm not saying that didn't happen before, but it's a signpost, if you like, to inform an organization that actually this is a good thing to be doing, because it not only helps your kind of understanding of what your environment can be like, but it also helps with machine learning tools to ease the burden of the data analytics that every sports organization's having to deal with right now.
Do you think, just to touch on that as well, do you think that the ability to become proactive with the tool and get it in front of coaching staff and more people within the organization helps to build a collective idea around this being a positive product for the entire business, rather than in the past, maybe Zone7 or other products might have been siloed to the performance department and not really been utilised and accessed or understood properly by the broader business? Do you think that this tool kind of gets the app and the thoughts and minds of everybody involved in the organisation a bit more?
I think it can do. I think that I hear lots of sports organisations talk about, it would be great if we could be more data driven. I actually think that that's probably not the greatest perspective to have, but being more data informed is probably the middle ground, where you kind of harmonise data insights with subjective professional expertise and experience and opinion and that sort of thing. But having a planning tool for getting the most and leveraging your data in the most optimal manner is a vehicle, I suppose, to making what's the word I'm looking for, this kind of like joined up thinking across a hierarchy of a sports organization be a little bit more cohesive. All of a sudden you've got sporting directors, coaching staff, that sort of thing that can be a little bit more empowered with actually what's going on from a performance perspective, and maybe vice versa. I use my own experience as a physiotherapist and a performance practitioner, where I've been asked questions by coaches, by sporting directors about, well, what can this particular player do or be exposed to, in the next few days, in the next week? What's the likelihood of him or her being available for the game a week on Saturday, for example? And all I could draw upon was my own professional opinion and expertise. And I think that being able to kind of harmonize that now with some objectivity makes any answer I provide or my peer group be able to provide an answer that's actually bolstered with a bit of psychological security, allow people to be a little bit more confident in the information that they're sort of projecting to the broader sports organization personnel,
So as you touched on the simulator there, I believe that the simulator product has moved almost into version 2.0 now. Can you expand a little bit more on what exactly it looks like now and how the product has evolved?
Yeah, sure. So the simulator and the periodization planner are sort of inherently linked. What we're trying to do, or we're offering the users of Zone7 with the simulator, is the ability to explore different sort of workload scenarios, really enhance that proactive planning. So the simulator is now pre-populated with the information, if you like, from the periodization planner. So any recommendations it's making, sort of with a forward-looking perspective, are taken from the periodization planner. But the simulator 2.0, as you put it, has a whole degree of kind of like flexibility and adaptability to be, adjusted so that people can project and play around with maybe different scenarios and assess how one or another type of scenario will have a positive or negative outcome on an individual. So the way the simulator works currently is by looking at historical sessions and the likely sort of periodization that's going to occur moving forward, and actually it's then sort of referencing on a day-by-day basis, okay, this is the most likely session, and this is the session that we recommend would keep the player in their sort of optimal Goldilocks zone, if you like. And sometimes it could be, what actually was planned, and sometimes it could be a slight deviation from that. So it's very much allowing people to kind of build future periodizations on a session-by-session basis, but it also retains the ability to kind of get a little bit more granular and go, okay, yes, we're going to do a physical conditioning session today, or we're planning on doing a couple of physical conditioning sessions in the next few days, but we can just adjust some of the sort of key metrics, like how long we're going to do it for, how much distance a player is going to cover, how much sprinting distance a player is going to cover in each of those sessions. So you can really kind of fine tune these projected scenarios. And then by doing that, we can simulate a risk forecast for up to 7 days in advance. So that, again, you can kind of stand by any recommendations that you make around a certain athlete. Do they need to perhaps do more on certain days or do less on certain days? But the whole idea is that you kind of keep them in their training rhythm rather than it be this kind of boom and bust, train, don't train scenario. So the simulators evolved, to have a lot more functionality whilst being a little bit more user-friendly, I suppose. And as I mentioned right at the start, it's completely underpinned in the first instance by the information each environment is providing in the periodization planner.
Rich, thanks so much for your time today, and I look forward to hearing a lot more about the integration of the product into Zone7 services.
Paul, thanks very much for asking the questions and inviting me along.
Thank you. If you want to hear more from Zone7 and our Performance Hub, you can follow us at the website zone7.ai or follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. There'll be an episode every month, and you can find out more information by following our Twitter account and also on LinkedIn. Thanks.